Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Vaeschanan, Erev Shabbos, Shabbos Nachamu. You look in the Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu admonishing the people, telling them, setting them up about what's going to be for the future. And there is a lot of discussion about Avodah Zarah. In the Aseret HaDibros and the Ten Commandments, there's a commandment about Avodah Zarah, about idolatry. Idolatry is really a central theme of things that we have to stay away from in the Torah. And yet, idolatry doesn't really seem to be pertinent nowadays. It's not something that people run to. It used to be a horror, a desire for people to worship idols, but it doesn't seem to be such a big thing. People do it, but it doesn't seem to be such a desire, a draw. It's not like of the top 10 biggest problems in our lives. So why would it be so prevalent in the Torah? Because I think we don't understand what Avodah Zarah is, because I think it is actually a huge problem. Because Avodah Zarah is not just about worshiping something outside of ourselves, but the Moshe Rabbeinu turns to the Jewish people and describes to them the giving of the Torah. And he turns to them and he says, Anochi omid ben Hashem v'nechem ba'isa hi la'agid lochem es dvar Hashem. That I was standing between you and God in order to be able to tell you over the word of God. Because you were afraid of the fire, and you didn't go up to the mountain. And this is what I told over from God. And he goes over and he tells the 10 Commandments again. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them is simple. Pshat is that Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them that they were afraid. And because they were afraid, so then they couldn't hear all the Torah from God. They had to hear 2 commandments directly from God, the rest of the commandments from Moshe Rabbeinu. And then Moshe Rabbeinu was their person standing in between, the intermediary. But according to many of our rabbis, what Moshe Rabbeinu was really saying was he was saying that you know why you were so afraid and you know why you didn't want to hear it from God. Because Anochi omed ben Hashem v'nechem. Because your Anochi, your sense of I, your own ego, your own sense of self. That's what stood between you and God. Because idolatry, the real problem with idolatry is not that you're bowing down to a stick or a stone. The real problem with idolatry is that you're serving yourself. And that it manifests itself both in bowing down to statues and into images, and also to basing every decision about me, and to focusing on me. And that Anochi is what stands between us and God. Any issue, whether it's ben adam l'chaver or ben adam l'makom, very often when it deteriorates, and it deteriorates into anger between two people, or it deteriorates between anger between us and God, the reason why it's deteriorated, the reason why it's turned into af, is because it's all about Anochi. The gematria, the numerical value of af, of anger, is 81. The numerical value of Anochi is 81. Because when we're focused on ourselves, that's what causes things to dissolve, and to dilute, and to destruct. But the truth is I need Anochi, because if I don't worry about me, who's going to worry about me? I got to worry about numero uno. I got to worry about myself. I got to worry about where I'm going. Yeah, but it all has to be put in check. It all has to be in a balance. But when I am just totally and completely about me, then what am I? If it's just about me and focusing on myself, then it's nothing. And that's what we have to be careful of. That our Anochi doesn't take over our lives and become the center of every single thing that we do and every single decision that we make. And even though, unquestionably, we need to have our sense of self, but we also need to be able to step outside of ourselves. And the more we step outside of ourselves, the more we're able to see God, the more we're able to see each other. The Gemara says in Masechah Shabbos that there was, when trees weren't doing well and it was sitting near the road, so they would tie a string around the tree so that people would see it and they would daven for the tree. Because people had an ability to be able to step outside of themselves. Rav Moshe Shapiro once told over a story of a young Talmid Chacham. When he was a young Talmid Chacham, he was a father inundated with children. And somebody saw him. He saw how beautiful he was with his children and said to him, how are they ever going to repay you? So Rav Moshe said, they give me a future. So he said this over to the Brisker Rav. And the Brisker Rav said, no, you're making a terrible mistake. We have children because we need to give. And they give us back nothing. Because it's not about us. It's about stepping outside of ourselves and giving to others. Saying the Beis Hamikdash, one of the miracles that took place, that that we were standing packed up against each other. But when it came to bow down in front of God, we were able to prostrate ourselves on the ground. There was enough room for everybody. And one of our commentaries wants to say, you know what that means? That omdim, when you're standing rigid, when it's all about you, and you're standing your ground, so then it's tzafuf. It's very tight. But when you're mishtachavim, when you bow down to others, when you can see other people, then revachim, there's plenty of room for everybody. Rachav was 40 years a Zaina. And in the end, she marries Yoshua. And she has kids who are Nevi'im, who are prophets. How did she go from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs? So Chazal tell us that she did an act of selflessness. She helped those miraglim. She stepped outside of herself. And the minute she stepped outside of herself, her life changed. And she was able to be closer to God. They tell over Maisa of the Kloisenberger Rebbe that he saw girls after the war without socks. And he said to one of the girls, Yiddish maid walking around without socks. The girl looks at him and says, I don't have a piece of bread to eat. Where am I going to get socks? So the Kloisenberger Rebbe sat down on the ground. And he took off his socks and he gave them to her. It's not the end of the story. 40 years later, after the Kloisenberger Rebbe died, a lady came to pay a shiva call. And she walked into the house with a little bag. She sat down in front of the Avelim. Nobody could understand who she was, what she was doing there. She opens up the bag and she takes out a pair of socks. It's not about us. Anochi oimid ben Hashem v'nechem. The more we focus on us, the less we can see God, the less we can see other people. One of the lessons that should have come in spades during Tisha B'Av, the understanding that for 2,000 years we've been suffering because the people that lived Anochi, they lived about themselves. That's what Sinas Chinam, that's what Lashon Hara, that's what hatred is all about. It's all about focusing on me. If we step outside of ourselves, so then we have the ability to be able to see the Ribbon Shalom. We have the ability to be able to see others. And we have the ability to be able to bring a tremendous amount of Nachamu to ourselves and to our world. Have a beautiful Shabbos, everyone.